Have you ever wondered why God sometimes allow good people to suffer? Imagine being betrayed by a very people you love the most. Today we are going to follow the incredible story of Joseph, a young man whose life went from horror to slavery to prison and finally an unimaginable greatness. But none of this happened by accident. Stay with me until the very end because the final moments of the story reveal a powerful truth that could completely change how you see your own struggles. Let's begin with chapter 1. Our story begins in the land of Canaan, where a young man named Joseph lived with his father Jacob and his 11 brothers. Jacob loved Joseph deeply because he was the son born to him in his old age. One day, Jacob gave Joseph a beautiful robe, unlike anything his brothers owned. It was just a piece of clothing. It was a symbol of honor and favor. But every time Joseph's brother looked at the robe, jealousy grew stronger in their hearts. Then one night Joseph had an extraordinary dream. In the dream, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down before him. Joseph believed God was showing him something about the future. Excited, he shared the dream with his family. Instead of celebrating, his brother became furious. They thought Joseph was saying that one day he would rule over all of them. Even his father wondered what the dream could mean. From that moment on, Joseph's brother couldn't hide the hatred. Every word Joseph spoke made them more angry. They whispered among themselves, watched his every moment, and waited for the perfect opportunity. Joseph had no idea that danger was closer than he would ever imagine. But what they decided to do next is almost unbelievable. Was this the end of Joseph's story or just the beginning of God's plan? Let's find out. Stay till the end. Let's begin with chapter 2. In the last chapter, Joseph was walking towards his brother, completely unaware of what they were planning. If we thought the jealousy ended here, this is where the story takes a hard-hitting turn. One day, Jacob asked Joseph to go and check on his brothers, as they were tending the family's flock far from home. Trusting his father, Joseph set off across the fields, unaware that the simple journey would change his life forever. As his brothers saw him approaching in distance, they recognized the colorful robe immediately. The jealousy turned into something much darker, and they began making a plan that would shock the generations. As Joseph came closer, his brother recognized the colorful robe from far away. Before he could even greet them, they began whispering among themselves. Here comes the dreamer, they said, with hatred. Their jealousy had grown so deep that they had no longer saw Joseph as their brother. They saw him as the enemy. At first, some of them wanted to kill him. Imagine that Joseph had done nothing to deserve such hatred. But before they could act, Reuben, the oldest brother, stepped in. He secretly hoped to rescue Joseph later, so he convicted the others not to take his life. Instead, they grabbed Joseph, tore the beautiful robe from his shoulder, and threw him into a deep, empty pit. Joseph cried out, begging for brothers for mercy, but they ignored every word. As Joseph sat alone in the darkness, frightened and wondering why this was happening, a caravan of merchants traveling to Egypt appeared in distance. Judah had an idea. Why kill our own brother? He said. Let's sell him instead. The others quickly agreed. They pulled Joseph out of the pit, tied his hands, and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. Just like that, Joseph's freedom was gone. But here's what no one knew, not Joseph, not his brother, not even Jacob. What looked like a worst day for Joseph's life was actually a first step toward God's incredible plan. How could a slave in the foreign land ever become a ruler? The answer begins in the next chapter, so don't miss it and be with me till the end. Now let's begin with chapter 3. As the caravan disappeared over the horizon, Joseph looked back one last time at his homeland, not knowing if he would ever return. Meanwhile, his brother dipped Joseph's beautiful robe in goat's blood and carried it back to the father. When Jacob saw the robe, he believed a wild animal had killed his beloved son. His heart was shattered. while the brothers kept their terrible secret. Joseph had lost everything. His family was gone, his freedom was gone, and now he was a slave in a foreign land called Egypt. Most people would even given up hope, but Joseph chose to remain faithful to God. What happened next proves that God can bless you even in the darkest season. When Joseph arrived in the Egypt, he was sold to a powerful Egyptian official named Potiphar, a captain of Pharaoh's guard. Day after day, Joseph worked with honesty, wisdom, and excellence. Soon, Potiphar noticed something unusual. Everything Joseph did seemed to be prosper. Before long, Joseph was placed in charge of the entire household. It looked like his life was finally getting better. But just when everything seemed to be falling into place, another test came. Potiphar's wife repeatedly tried to tempt Joseph into sin. Joseph refused every time, choosing to honor God instead of giving in to temptation. One day, after Joseph ran away from her, she became furious. She grabbed his robe and falsely accused him by attacking her. Although Joseph had done nothing wrong, Potiphar believed the lie. Could this prison become a doorway to Joseph's destiny? In the next chapter, an impossible opportunity is about to change his life forever. Could this prison become a doorway to Joseph's destiny? In the next chapter, an impossible opportunity is about to change his life forever. So don't miss it. Now let's continue with chapter 4. One morning, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, was deeply troubled. He had dreams of 7 healthy cows being swallowed by 7 thin, starving cows. Then he saw 7 full heads of grains consumed by 7 withered ones. None of the Egypt's wisest men could explain the dream. Suddenly, Pharaoh's cupbearer remembered Joseph, the Hebrew person who had once interpreted his dream correctly. Joseph was quickly brought out of prison, cleaned and dressed to stand before the most powerful ruler in Egypt. Pharaoh asked him, "Can you interpret my dream?" Joseph answered, with humility, "I cannot, but God will give Pharaoh the answer." Instead of taking credit, Joseph gave all the glory to God. Joseph explained that God was warning Egypt. 7 years of great abundance were coming, followed by 7 years of terrible famine that would consume the land. Then Joseph boldly advised Pharaoh to store grains during the year of plenty, so the nation could survive the famine. Pharaoh was amazed. He recognized that God's wisdom was with Joseph. Without hesitation, Pharaoh removed his royal signet ring and placed it on Joseph's hand. The prisoner became the governor of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself. Joseph was given royal robes, a golden chair, and authority over the entire kingdom. The young man who had once been sold for 20 pieces of silver now ruled over the greatest nation on earth. As years passed, Joseph faithfully stored grains, preparing for the famine that God has revealed. Then, just as God had said, the famine began. It spread beyond Egypt into every surrounding land, including Canaan, where Joseph's own family lived. Joseph's brothers are about to come face to face with the man they sold into slavery, but they had no idea who he is. What happens next is one of the most emotional moments in the entire Bible. So stay with me. Let's begin with the final chapter, the fourth chapter. As the famine grew worse, Jacob had no choice but to send his son to Egypt to buy food. After a long and difficult journey, Joseph's brother entered the governor's place. They bowed low before the ruler of Egypt, never realizing they were standing before the very brother they had sold into slavery years earlier. At that moment, Joseph remembered the dreams God had given him as a young man. They had finally come true. Joseph recognized every one of his brothers, but they didn't recognize him. Before revealing his identity, Joseph decided to test their hearts. Had they truly changed? After several tests, one brother Judah offered to sacrifice his own freedom to save their youngest brother Benjamin. In that moment, Joseph realized the proud jealous man who had betrayed him were no longer the same people. Unable to hold back his emotion any longer, Joseph ordered everyone else to leave the room. Tears streamed down his face as he said, I am Joseph, your brother. His brothers stood frozen in fear. They expected punishment, they expected revenge. Instead, Joseph embraced them with tears and said, don't not be afraid. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to save many lives. Soon Jacob himself came to Egypt, and after many years, father and son were finally reunited. The family wept with joy as they embraced one another. Looking back over his life, Joseph understood something that few people ever do, that even the darkest moment had been woven into God's perfect plan. Without the betrayal, there would have been no Egypt. Without the prison, there would have been no palaces. Without the suffering, there would have no salvation for countless people during the famine. And that's why Joseph's story still speaks us today. Maybe you are going through a difficult season. Maybe you have been hurt, betrayed, or you are wondering where God is. Joseph's life reminds us that God is still working. Even when we can't see it, what others may intend for harm, God can use it for good. If the story encouraged our faith,